Good morning, everyone. I hope you can see me. Apologies that I am not doing this at my desk in the normal way, but as you can see, or maybe you can't see, I'm at Bushy Cemetery. So we've got back-to-back stone settings. So this is the only way that I could actually be with you this morning. We say good morning to Eitan, to Rachel, to Michelle, to Peter, to Richard, and to Estelle. Today's learning is dedicated in memory of Yosef ben Chaim Baruch Halevi Reisman, Meir ben Moshe Robinson, as well as Leah Bas Faiva, Rav Yaakov Tzvi ben David Aryeh Tzvi Bas Mordechai, Avram ben David Slavin, Shon ben Yisrael Morris, Sipora Feigle Bas Reuven Baruch, Shalom ben Eli ben Bas Faiva, From Shoshana Bas Yaakov Shmuel, Caleb Bela Bas Henoch, Yirmiyahu Yechiel ben Echave Moshe Eliezer, Sar Malka Bas Binyamin. So we are up to the chapter which is about Teshuva, repentance. And I couldn't think of a better, more apropos place to speak about Teshuva than in a cemetery. Why do I say that? The Talmud tells us that a person should carry out Teshuva the day before they die, in case it is too late. But we don't know when we are going to die. So therefore, answers the Talmud, therefore every day a person should consider one's actions and make sure that one has done teshuvah for any wrongdoing, because it could be the last day that we are here, and therefore it is appropriate for us not to rest on our laurels, but to make sure we make amends for anything we may have done in the past. So although Teshuvah is something that we are all very familiar with, we're all familiar with Teshuvah, repentance, when it comes to the high holy days, the period between Rosh Hashanah, the clarion call from the shofar arouses and awakens something in each and every one of us to reflect, to consider our actions. And in fact, the Sforim say that there is something inside us that is disturbed, that is awoken during this period of time, and it is a very auspicious time between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. They say the king comes out of his palace. In other words, God comes down, as it were, to be close to us, so that he is waiting and more receptive to our prayers and to Teshuvah. Nonetheless, based on what we just said, because we don't know, you shouldn't wait until Rosh Hashanah, until Yom Kippur to ask for forgiveness, but therefore we should every day consider it as if it is the last day, to make the most of the opportunities, and also to reflect and to make sure that any amends that need to be carried out we do in an appropriate way. In fact, another idea of being in a cemetery, and that is that there is a tradition that the way that you walk in to a cemetery, the route that you take in and the route that you take out. So if you visit a grave, right, you would go one way, and on the way back, you're meant to go on a different route. Why is that? So I once heard from Rabbi Lera, I don't know in whose name he said it, but the idea is that the same, we are not meant to come out of a cemetery the same way that we came in. We are meant to be transformed. We are meant to be changed. We are meant to be introspective. And therefore, the idea of standing before a grave is that it should make us consider life, the fragility of life, the transience of life. And therefore, we have a greater appreciation of life. And therefore, we will reflect and go through a process of teshuvah, of repentance. In fact, when it comes to Tisha B'Av, in the afternoon of Tisha B'Av, there is a tradition on the saddest day of the year that we are meant to visit a cemetery, so that we should consider our actions and go through that process of teshuvah. So let's now speak a bit about the idea of repentance. And it's one of the longest chapters, you won't be surprised about, in terms of the ways of the righteous. Teshuvah is the longest chapter. There are many levels of repentance in accordance with which one draws closer to the Blessed One, and the soul is never entirely pure. So therefore, one of the questions that is always asked is, why is it straight after Yom Kippur, we've all been forgiven, and yet what do we do in the Amidah straight after Yom Kippur in Ma'ariv? We say, Salach lanu avinu ki chatanu. We ask God for forgiveness. Why are we asking God for forgiveness when we have just been forgiven? And this, friends, is exactly the point that we've just made, because there are many levels of teshuva, of repentance. Imagine you're in a relationship and you start to ask the other person that's upset. Usually it's the wife that's upset with the husband, and justly so, I should say. And you ask her, sweetie, why are you upset? And she starts to say something. She says, you're just not as considerate as you should be. You're not thinking of me. I could do this quite well. I'm quite convincing, aren't I? Anyways, so after a few minutes, the husband will say, I am so sorry. I just wasn't thinking enough about you, and from now on I'm going to be more considerate. And she says, no, you're not listening. And then for another 20 minutes she carries on speaking to him and telling him and pouring out her heart about how sorry she is about all the things that he has done wrong, and how much pain and anguish she has suffered as a result. Now, when he says sorry the second time, having heard, as she has shared with him from the depths of her heart, her innermost emotions and feelings, hopefully there is greater contrition the second time when he asks for forgiveness than the first time. And that is why, however great a person is and however much a person has asked for forgiveness, once they reach that place of having asked for forgiveness, they recognize the intensity of the pain, the enormity of the sin, and therefore that is when they will ask for repentance again. And therefore it's an ongoing process for us to ask for forgiveness. Let me just read a bit more. One must seize upon the trait of regret and impress it upon his heart. We know that one of the first stages, obviously, is recognizing we've done something wrong and showing remorse and regret. Right? If you listen to a politician, you listen to a celebrity, and whenever they have to apologize for anything, what do they say? It's very regretful what happened. They never take true responsibility. I regret. At best, they say I regret. Usually, they don't even say that. They just say it is regretful what happened, but they never actually take responsibility. The idea is that I am regretting what I did. Right? How could the awe of God not have been before my eyes? Right? Imagine you're in front of Queen Elizabeth, Her Majesty, and you ask, and you recognize that you did something wrong. You put out your hand when you weren't meant to, you spoke before she did. As you get closer to her for the second time and you're going to have to ask forgiveness, the enormity of what you have done, it just strikes you. You're overwhelmed. How could I not have been more considerate, more thoughtful when I was standing in front of the presence of the Queen? I remember Lord Levy, when he came to Woodside Park on a very famous visit, he mentioned about, I think it was the King of Jordan or something, and he went in, he had to go in to meet him. And it was designed, the whole palace was designed that as you went in, the doors got bigger and bigger and the corridors got longer and longer to impress upon you the majesty of who you're about to meet, and that you should have a greater, overwhelming sense of intrepidation as you're about to meet the king. If that's true of the King of Jordan, so much more so when it comes to the King of Kings. How could I not have subdued my evil inclination? That is, in fact, one of my kids asked me, what is hell? Hell, Gehenna, is the regret that we have, the regret that we have for our misdeeds, or for not being aware, but not being cognizant of the fact that we were standing in front of the King of Kings. In other words, if we have that awareness of who we are standing in front of, then we would never, ever be able to sin. That is why God says to Adam, he says, Ayeka, where are you? God didn't know where Adam was. Of course he knew where he was. But he's saying to him, how could you not have been aware of the fact that I was in front of you? If you had that awareness, then you would never have been able to sin. We'll make one more point and then we'll stop, so that I'm not going to hold anything up today here. So he says, the forsaking of sin. The sinner must forsake his evil ways and resolve with all his heart not to embark upon them again. This is the beginning of repentance, to abandon one's evil ways and thoughts, to resolve within his heart to take it upon himself never to sin again. You've got to be sincere. It can't be lip service. We've got to genuinely, sincerely, honestly be able to say to another person, and of course to God, I really, really want to change. Really, I do. And if you speak to people, and I have, that are in AA, they're and they've had addictions and they're trying to overcome them. The strength, the strength of that statement when they stand in front of other people and they are able to make that admission, that confession about the fact that they were an alcoholic, or they are an alcoholic, and that they want to change, is so potent and so powerful. That in itself brings the change. So that we're going to have to stop there. I'm sorry, but as I said to you, I'm just delighted that we managed to squeeze it in today. So the Psalm 23, the Song of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He causes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even as I walk in the valley of darkness, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You set a table before me in the presence of my adversaries. You anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. May only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord for the length of days. Memorial prayer. Adon Elamim Zacho Es Nishmois Yosef Ben Chaim Baruch Halevi Reisman Moye Ben Moshe Robinson Leah Bas Feivel, Rav Yaakov Tzvi ben David Ari, Tzvi Bas Mordechai, Avram ben David Slavish, Shalom ben Yisrael Morris, Sephora Fegel Bas Reuven Baruch, Shalom ben Yelili, Peina Bas Feivel from Moshe Shana Bas Yaakov Shmuel, Caleb Bela Bas Henach, Yirmiyahu Yechiv ben Echel, Moshe Eliezer, Sarah Malka Bas Ben Yamin Shalach Uli Elamam, Began Aiden Taimanu Chasam, Lachin Balarachamim, Yasirein Beseisakan Afabri Alamim, Veyetzov Besagais Nishmasam, Adonai Nachlasam, Vianuchu B'Shalom Ishkavam, Venamar, Amen. Long life to everyone. Lastly, for Shlema prayer. Misha Baruch Avzain Robins from Yaakov Moshe, and David Shlomo Baruch Rupes Achailim, Bavo Shana Mispalim, Bavo Ram, Biskas Akadosh Baruch Hu Yimali Rachim Aleichem, Lach Malafazam, Vishlach Lim Fushlim Shmaim Malacholim Besoshach, Ol Yisrael, Refuas HaNefesh, Refuas HaKov, Hashabagas Makariv, Venamar, Amen. Think about the words we just said in Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. King David found himself facing some of the greatest adversities and challenges and vicissitudes of life itself. But what is it that he was able to hang on to? He spoke to God. More and more, friends, if I'm being honest, I think I just start to speak to God. We just have a conversation, not just in a prayer. I don't have to wait for mincha. If I've got a frustration, if something's upsetting me, I speak to God. I'm in my car. I have a conversation with him. I tell him what's on my mind. Because if we make it real and it becomes a part of who we are, a natural part of who we are, then we have a greater awareness of God being there, and therefore Teshuva becomes a part of who we are, and we won't even need to the same degree Teshuva, because we'll have a greater sensitivity of our bearings and what is around us. Wishing everyone a good day. Keep safe, keep well, and please God have simchas for all of us, and we'll be back, please God, in front of the desk tomorrow. Looking forward. Take care.